There once was a man in ancient Greece who didn't cry when the world broke down. He laughed. He didn't scream at injustice, chase status, or beg for recognition. His name was Democritus. He used to laugh at people, not in a mean way, but in the way someone does when they've seen too much of the same nonsense over and over. Not because he hated people, but because he saw how silly we all are, how we chase things we don't need, argue over nothing, and pretend to be wise when we're really just confused. He was called the Laughing Philosopher, and that wasn't just a nickname, it was how he lived. His laughter wasn't cruel. It was the kind that comes from someone who's seen behind the curtain. And what he saw back there, mostly a circus. He was born in Adera, a quiet corner of ancient Thrace, somewhere around 460 BCE. It wasn't a place where you'd expect genius to grow, but sometimes genius likes strange places. They say he was wealthy early on, inherited money from his father, and spent most of it doing something wild for that time. Traveling. Back then, most people never left their cities, let alone travel the world to find themselves. They mostly stayed home. But Democritus couldn't sit still. Knowledge was a hunger he couldn't shake, and home just wasn't enough to feed it. He went out into the world. He walked and rode and sailed across the ancient world, trying to learn everything. He went to Egypt. He studied with the priests. He might have even gone to Babylon and Persia. He wanted to know how everything worked, from stars in the sky to the noise inside your head. He traveled to feed his soul. While out there, he started to see the world differently. He wasn't just asking what people thought, he was asking what reality was. And while most philosophers were still focused on abstract forms or moral codes, Democritus went microscopic. He looked at a rock, a tree, a human hand, and thought, this can't be the whole story. What if everything is made of tiny, invisible things, too small to see? Bits that never die, just change shape and bounce around forever. He called them atoms. That's right, long before microscopes or labs or nuclear physics, this laughing man with wind-blown hair imagined the building blocks of reality. Tiny, eternal particles, always moving, never truly destroyed. To him, that was the secret behind everything. And he didn't stop there. He looked up at the Milky Way, not with superstition, but with wonder. Others thought it was a road of gods or the breath of night spirits. Democritus said, nah, that's just a bunch of stars packed together. He was right. Thousands of years before telescopes would prove it, he called it. Just stars clustered in space. That's the thing about him. He didn't need the tools. He just had a mind that cut through illusions like a blade. But for all that brilliance, Democritus didn't become a celebrity. He wasn't praised like Socrates. He didn't get a school named after him like Plato. He didn't make it into textbooks during his own life. If anything, he annoyed the big names. Diogenes Laertius, a later writer who collected gossip and quotes about the old philosophers, tells us that Plato just couldn't stand Democritus. Yes, Plato, the philosopher with the flowing robes and big ideas about perfect forms and perfect worlds, hated him, wouldn't even mention him by name. Why? Because Democritus didn't believe in Plato's invisible world of forms. He didn't believe there was a perfect table somewhere in another dimension. He thought what we see is all there is, atoms and void. That's it. No magical blueprint, just bits bumping into each other forever. Simple, scary, and somehow more real. Plato also reportedly said he wanted to burn all of Democritus's writings. Imagine that. A supposed lover of knowledge, wanting to erase another man's ideas. All because Democritus didn't play by the same rules. He always just laughed, saying, everything is atoms. And everything is motion. Deal with it. Even Aristotle, who wrote about everything, who studied plants and animals and logic and the heavens, knew of Democritus. Unlike Plato, he at least gave him some respect, called him sharp, clever, said he was important. He didn't always agree with him, but he took him seriously. And that tells you something, because Aristotle didn't waste his time on fools. He liked his facts straight and his ideas clear. He preferred purpose over particles. He wanted to know why things happened, not just how. Democritus, meanwhile, thought the why was a human fantasy. Things happen because atoms move. That's it. No fate. No gods pushing events. Just cause and effect, like dominoes falling in a breeze. So, if Democritus showed up in one of Aristotle's books, that means he mattered. It's funny. Democritus was a mentor and a teacher too. He taught Protagoras, who became famous for saying, "Man is the measure of all things." Meaning that truth isn't some absolute thing out there. It depends on us and on our experience. That kind of thinking would later twist and turn into modern psychology, into ideas about perception and bias and subjectivity. But back then, it was explosive, and it came from the classroom of the man who saw the world in atoms and smiles. But people still didn't get him. Not really. Most thought he was weird, too quiet sometimes, too loud with laughter other times. There's a story, not confirmed, but told over and over, that he blinded himself on purpose. Why? Some said he wanted to escape distraction, that he was so focused on inner peace, on ataraxia, that he saw sight itself as noise. Now maybe that's a myth, but it captures something true. Democritus didn't see the world the way others did. He didn't just want truth, he wanted stillness. He believed happiness didn't come from riches or glory. It came from a quiet mind, a soul not shaken by pleasure or pain, a person who sees the storm and laughs because he knows it can't touch what's inside. Now, if this sounds familiar, it should, because there was another strange man, another wild philosopher with little care for social norms who wandered barefoot and mocked the powerful, Diogenes the cynic. But while Democritus laughed at human folly from a distance, Diogenes got right in your face. Where Democritus smiled at the foolishness of kings, Diogenes barked at them like a dog. One laughed, the other bit. They both saw through the nonsense of society. They both hated pretense. But their energy was different. Diogenes would walk into Plato's lectures, fart loudly, and call his teachings useless. Democritus would probably chuckle quietly in the back, make a mental note, and move on. Diogenes lived in a barrel. Democritus probably wandered the roads in long robes, still dusty from Egypt, mumbling about atoms. They were both misfits, but one burned hot like fire, and the other buzzed like a hidden star. Still, their message had overlap. Don't trust appearances. Don't get caught up in pride, in wealth, in what the crowd says is success. Real freedom is inside. Real happiness isn't found in gold or gods. It's found when you understand the nature of things and stop pretending life is anything other than what it is. Democritus called it euthymia, a quiet soul. Not quiet like silence, but quiet like still water. He thought the best life was one where your mind didn't get thrown around by every little thing. And this part is important, because this is where people didn't get him. They thought he was strange for laughing all the time, but he wasn't laughing at life. He was laughing because he understood it. And once you understand it, you don't fear it so much. You can breathe. The sad thing is, most of Democritus's writings are gone. He wrote over 70 books. We only have fragments now, scraps, little torn pieces of what might have been the clearest view of the universe that existed back then. And yet, even in those pieces, there's this spark, this sense that he knew things before the world was ready. People back then wanted stories about gods throwing thunder and fate guiding lives. Democritus said no. Just atoms, just movement, just logic. It didn't comfort them. But it was honest, and he wasn't cold about it either. He was human, deeply so. He believed joy was the goal, a joy rooted in knowing your place in the universe. Tiny, yes, but part of something big and beautiful. He wanted people to be free from fear. He thought if you understood the world, you wouldn't be scared of it. You'd smile, you'd laugh, that you'd be okay even when everything around you fell apart. He saw too much noise in the world, too many people chasing things they didn't need, arguing over things they didn't understand. So he stepped back, he laughed, he studied, he let the noise go. And in a way, that's still radical. Because even today, we chase noise. We scroll through endless drama. We argue with strangers online. We pretend we're wise by saying big words and acting like we know everything. And maybe that's why he laughed so much. Not because he thought people were stupid, but because he saw how seriously they took things that didn't matter. Wars for ego, riches for pride, beliefs that broke friendships. He saw all that, and maybe he just thought, wow, we're funny little creatures, aren't we? He reminds me of a man watching a play he's seen 100 times. Everyone else is gasping, weeping, screaming at the plot. But he knows how it ends, so he watches with a smile, letting the drama unfold, knowing it's all part of the dance. And that dance, to him, was made of atoms. You, me, the stars, the sea, all just arrangements of tiny bouncing bits, nothing magic. But still, somehow, magical. He believed that even the soul itself was made of atoms, thoughts and feelings, all tied to tiny particles moving in harmony. When you died, the atoms just scattered. Nothing was lost, just rearranged. You returned to the great mix, the endless motion. Death wasn't an end, it was just a change. So why fear it? And that's where his peace came from. He didn't need a heaven, he didn't need a god with a beard or a set of rules carved in stone. He just needed understanding. And through that understanding, he found peace. And through peace, he found joy. Most people today don't even know his name. Ask someone about Plato. Sure, they've heard of him. Aristotle? Of course. Socrates? Definitely. But Democritus? Forgotten by time. Yet his ideas shaped the very way we understand matter, space, the stars. And maybe that's fitting. Maybe a man who believed everything is small and temporary would be fine with being forgotten. Maybe he'd laugh at the idea of needing fame at all. He never wanted to be worshipped or followed. He wanted to understand. That's it. And that makes him different from so many philosophers who wanted students and temples and statues. Democritus didn't need that. He had his thoughts, his joy, and his quiet. Freedom, to men like Democritus and Diogenes, didn't mean doing whatever you want. It meant not being owned by what you don't need, not being pushed around by society's rules, not being afraid to laugh when everyone else is crying, or cry when everyone else is laughing. It meant truth, not comfort, and that's always been rare. We look at history and try to sort people into good and bad, wise and foolish, saint and villain. But Democritus reminds us that maybe the best people are the ones who don't fit the chart, the ones who lived sideways, who saw things differently, who weren't trying to change the world, but just trying to understand it. And in that understanding became something rare. Democritus spent his later years in his hometown, probably still writing, still thinking, not chasing crowds, not opening schools, just doing what he always did, exploring the world from the inside out. He was misunderstood. That's almost always the fate of people who see too far. The world likes comfort. Democritus offered clarity, and clarity makes people nervous. It takes away all the excuses. Democritus wasn't the hero of his age, but he might have been its wisest ghost, walking among the fools, laughing, watching the stars, and waiting for the world to catch up.